Hi, everyone. I'm just going to invite the girls and we'll get started. Oh my God, that's so scary.
Hi.
It
Hola.
worked. Hola.
How
¿Cómo
you doing?
están? This is so nerve-wracking, but here we are.
We did it.
Thanks for joining us, you guys. I'm so close. Hold on, I'm going to go back. I'm going to back up. I obviously haven't practiced this. Have you guys met each other ever?
No.
No.
Okay. I love this. I love this for so many reasons. Hi, everyone who's joining us. I was doing a little introduction. We're on our second CAMPO conversation of this kind of our new art fest that's coming up. We started the CAMPO conversations after our last art fest, CAMPO Art Fest, talking to participating artists that talked about last year's theme, which was about ancestry and the roots of land and water. And we thought it would be a great bridge to start talking about movement and migration with our upcoming artists. And you guys are our first outside of Uruguay artists that we're talking to. And I'm sorry we're doing it in English because we have to do it in English for me. So thank you. Our theme this year is un/settled, on movement and migration. And I love, our themes tend to kind of roll into one another. So it's been great having the conversation around ancestry and lineage, and it seems to roll right into migration, which you guys both work with that theme. I think you both know, I think I probably told you this when we first talked, but I studied textiles and apparel and textiles 100,000 years ago. So I'm especially excited to talk to you and hear your thoughts on the subject today. We have with us Arleene Correa Valencia, calling in from Napa
Napa.
today, from
Yeah.
Napa today, and Cassandra Mayela, am I saying that right, Allen? Or Allen in Uruguay. Are
And
you in Mexico today?
yes, I'm still in Oaxaca.
She's in Oaxaca today. I just want to say first we were going to do one of you guys at a time, and I thought, you know what, you both work with textiles and other things, and I thought it would be great to have a conversation with both of you. I did a little bit of research with Elena, helped me do research, gracias, Ele, and somewhere you both said in so many words that that you both find beauty in the hardship. I kind of paraphrase that, and but I love that. I love that you're both change makers in that way, and working with art to create beauty. There's quilting, weaving, sewing, cutting, pleating between you both. You both work with community. I think art as transformation of trauma in your both individual ways. I would say something about textiles as emotion. That may be my own interpretation, but I'd love to hear you on that. In that textiles are carrying, embodying, and representing. Um, but I want to start with hearing a little bit about both of you personally. Like, who are you? You can tell each other too, because it's kind of our first meeting. Oh, I will say that both Arlene and Cassandra are coming for our December residency. So they both are. We are both going to Miami, right?
Oh,
Yes.
are you going as well, Cassandra?
Yes.
Oh, that's so,
I'll be
so
showing.
exciting.
And I'll
Oh
be
yeah.
there too. So we'll be there for a couple days, yay, and meet there, and then we'll all land here. And so they'll be here for the month, being in community with 13 other, no, 12 other artists in residence. And then I think we have a cohort for the festival of 20. Um, Anyway, we're so excited to have you down here. But can you guys share a little bit? Maybe Arlene, do you want to start? Because you're A.
Sure.
You probably always get that.
Yeah, well, it's so nice to meet you, Cassandra,
Like,
and happy to be in conversation today. Um, yeah, I guess about me, I feel like I used to start with like I'm an artist, right? But these days it really feels like I'm a tia. And I'm really like
yeah.
loving this tia title. I'm
How
actually watching. Oh,
how
go
old
ahead.
is your niece, nephew, person?
Yeah, I have one that's 5. She's the oldest, and then my nephew is 3, and the tiniest one is 5 months old. And so my brother had a little bit of an emergency and needed a babysitter today. And I just put her down for a nap. If she starts crying, you will meet her. But she's adorable. And like this very much feeds into my work, which I guess like for me, there is no separation between life and work. It all just feels like one melting pot. And like going back to what Heidi said, it's like the work bleeds and I bleed, and it has so much to do with trauma, so much to do with border violence and loss. But at the same time, the work really like celebrates the love, because I feel like in order to really understand the loss of migration, you have to understand the love too, the love component and of how we got here. And so my story starts that when I was 3 years old, I left Mexico. I was born in Michoacan. And unfortunately, we just like couldn't survive there. So my dad brought us to the US, and I was undocumented for 25 years. I was a dreamer for 10 years, and then I feel like I would say I just got my green card, but it's been a little bit over a year now, but it feels like just yesterday. And so the work is really like, it starts with my dad and really like untangling the love that he had for us to cross the border, and dream of a better future. Because if there was no love, there would be no dream and no action. And with that love comes so much pain, and so much suffering that we still feel today. So, yeah, I feel like my relationship with these kids, these 3 kids, is like writing their story so that they don't forget how much love and pain it took for them to be here.
Yeah.
What about you? What are you doing in Oaxaca? Do you live there? What's going
Um,
on?
no, I'm currently doing a residency. I'm here in a fellowship with Poco a Poco,
Okay.
um, which is like a process-based residency. You're not really supposed or asked to work on anything specific, just more like, as the name says or suggests, take things slow.
Mm.
Um, Oaxaca, I lived here for periods of time before the pandemic, and I feel like the ethos that this residency carries, it's really ingrained with, in my opinion, how things work here in Oaxaca. Everything's very slow, and I don't mean that in a like negative way. Um, I live in New York, so of course it will feel like even slower. Um, but yeah, I feel like Oaxaca is it's crazy to me because it's actually one of the poorest states in Mexico, but it's so abundant in so many ways, especially from the people and like what you're saying, the love these people have for their land and their craft and everything around it, and how generous they can be with it too, is like it never ceases to amaze me. I love it here. um but I actually started working on the piece that I'm going to install at Campo here. um I I did not cross any border on foot. And I guess the one that decided to leave was me. My family's still back home in Venezuela. Oh yeah, I should have started by that. I'm from Venezuela. I left the country 10 years ago in 2014 because of the social climate. I really didn't plan to move. I was supposed to just maybe, my intention was to explore a way where I could like come and go and and kind of create a business that allowed me to have that flexibility. But yeah, the government had very different plans, and our currency plummeted. And yeah, after trying to get an O1 visa and maybe considering moving to Mexico because staying in the US was proving to be quite intense, um, I ended up getting married, and the relationship was great until it wasn't. And then I got divorced, and I'm a resident, and I got married again last year. Um, Still great, still super happy. But yeah, it's a very interesting way, you know, like I feel like a lot of a lot of people I meet are in between spaces, and I can definitely identify with that feeling of not fully belonging, let's call the host uh, place, and in a way not fully belonging anymore to the motherland because you're not like completely in tune with um, things that are happening back home. Um, or how I would really describe my case, especially right now, just having like your mind and your heart in both places at once. Having most of my family still back in Venezuela and in other places makes it a little bit hard to feel like fully present wherever I am. So I feel like I battle with that constantly. Um, but yeah, I feel like that's also the gesture of the work, right? To try and connect, to try and establish, to try and care for others and caring for yourself through it as well.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. I don't know if that answers anything you asked, but
Yeah, no, that's great. I
no.
mean, I also can relate to that, right? Like I'm also an immigrant here. I just sold my car in the States and I
Wow.
cried. I cried. I was just like, wow, I didn't realize that I had that one last attachment besides my family. And, you know, there is something about creating work that helps that friction or that split, right? There's something that like ties it all in, ties in our telas. But talk about a little bit about how you came to your work, or what is your connection to textiles or art in general? Can you share a little bit of that? I know, Cassandra, a little bit about your store and fashion history. You want to start
Yeah,
there?
so the reason I came to the US to begin with is because I had at the time I had a vintage clothing brand back in Caracas, um, which was doing great, and we were going to open a store, and then the climate changed, and then it just didn't make sense to keep on importing these like used goods. So I thought, what about doing it the other way around and bringing stuff from Venezuela to the US and kind of like showcasing um, the vintage that we had access to, because the custom in Caracas and in many parts of Venezuela, I also realized it happens here in Mexico too, is that you would go to a seamstress and get like tailor-made stuff. Um, so there were like really cool stuff from, you know, like the 80s, 90s, funky fabrics, really like weird cuts. And so I thought about um, doing that. But like I said, plot twist, and then I ended up staying. My background is in graphic design, specialized in digital textile design, and I really thought that that's what I wanted to do. Once I had the right documentation to work in the U.S., I was working in the garment district, you know, like, ooh, yay, New York, here we are. Hated it. Like the most miserable I've ever been. Um, and so it took a long time and a lot of personal work to untangle, um, and kind of like what you said, Arlene, at the beginning, that you would like introduce yourself like, I'm an artist. Um, it took me so long to be comfortable with the idea of me like being this like creative person, artist person. So now I'm like, yeah, I'm an artist. Yes. Um, and Yeah. Now I'm not making clothes. Now I'm tearing clothes apart in order to make work, which I think there's a metaphor there.
Yeah, I love that because I really connect with that. I started as an oil painter, um, and my intro into art or the language of art was very limited because I grew up very poor in Napa. Obviously, as an undocumented family, we didn't have access to a lot of things. Definitely not art. But my dad always wanted to be a painter, and I get so emotional. I don't know if it's like the time of the month, but if I cry, I'm so sorry. It just feels
Okay.
like I've been thinking about this a lot lately, how our dreams are ancestral. Like I don't believe that our dreams are ours. I believe that there are layers of hundreds of years that build together so that we can become who we are, or we can further the dream a little bit more. I've always thought that it's like carrying a torch and like protecting a fire. And even if you don't get to like have this amazing fire in this lifetime, you give it to the kids and hopefully the kids will protect it and then give it to their kids. And so for me being an artist, it was taking my dad's fire and keeping it alive. And it very much feels like he thought that the greatest thing you could do in art was oil painting. So that was the expectation of me. And I wanted that so badly, but I never felt that my true voice, like aside from carrying this dream for dad and his parents and his grandparents, I never felt like it was actually mine until I started working in textiles. And then I felt like, oh, I actually can carry dad's fire and add my part of it, right, to it. And I let go of these ideas of oil painting and it having to be painting. And my mother-in-law actually introduced me to textiles as an art form, and that she challenged me like during COVID. I didn't have access to my studio, and she said, "Why don't you make a painting out of textiles on the sewing machine?" And I said, "You can't do that. Like, that's not how you make a painting." And then after months of not having access, the work came to life. And I really thought, like, how do I show people how much my dad loves me? And it began tearing his clothes apart and wanting to reconstruct portraits that show how much a parent can love a child. And from there, it's just like gone super crazy. And now I take everybody's clothing, I steal clothing, blankets, socks, underwear, like whatever I can get my hands on, from the kids, from my parents, from my husband, like family heirloom stuff that I probably shouldn't tear up. But to me, it's like, it's like our truth, and it's archiving it in a way that is different than what we're used to, right? Or like putting it in a box. Um, so it's a very beautiful language to deconstruct and reconstruct.
And did you teach yourself how to sew? I saw you on a sewing machine.
Yeah, I did. I taught myself. And so I feel like sometimes when like people that are very trained in textiles see my work, they're like, "What the hell is she doing? You're not supposed to do that." And I'm like,
Same.
"I'm a painter. I'm not a quilter. I will not have the little band on the edges.
That's crazy.
Things will fray."
I went
You know?
I went to a meeting. I was doing another residency in Detroit earlier this year, and I went to a meeting of a Detroit Quilters Guild. And of course, like, I'm the youngest one there, and everyone's like, "Who are you?" And they're desperate to see my work, and I'm feeling like so, like, I don't want to show you. Finally, I ended up showing one of these ladies, and she's like, "Oh, your work is really primitive, huh?" And I'm
Oh,
like, "Yeah, yeah." They're like, "These are artsy quilts. They're not meant to be used, correct?" I'm like, "You're totally right. Yes, they're not." And their work was so technical and so beautiful, but like so specific that I see it, and I see like all the, yeah, the labor that requires, but I cannot, like, I'm not attracted to show my things that way. Oh my God, hi baby.
Yeah, no, it totally makes sense. Sorry. Here's Uche. Can you say hi? Can you say hi?
hi.
Say
You're so
hi.
lovely.
I'm
Hi.
sorry for
Hi.
interrupting.
Perfect. Perfect.
But no, you're right. And I think it's a different language, right? Like people that make quilts, at that level are doing it for different reasons, where like I think the work that we're making is about finding a different way to explain the like trauma that the work that the clothing, that the textiles, and the love and the energy that the textiles carry. Like it just, at least for me, it just seems like it's not about the method of
Those are you.
quilting, but like how to reuse that language in a different way, kind of in the way that I feel like Spanglish is a beautiful language.
Yeah.
You know, like it's not correct and it's not meant to be correct.
No, no,
And
no.
like lonche is not a word, and neither is troca, but it works. And it's
It
created out of
serves its
necessity.
purpose. Yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. For me also, like, I mean, well, like I said, I don't have like any background on proper um
Oh,
um
oh,
Oh,
but
did we lose her?
oh,
oh,
hi.
you're there.
I'm here.
Yeah, you're there.
Okay. What I was gonna say is that I feel like my process feels very painterly to me, more than technical construction of a quilt or a tapestry. Like it's about like, yeah, how does this fabric fraying feels next to this, I don't know, neon or other color. Like the composition is important to me in ways that I don't think for a traditional quilter is.
Do you want to share a little bit and I'll show some of your work or just talk about
Oh,
some
Oh yeah,
pieces
can
you've
we
sure.
done?
see it?
Yeah,
Is
let me
it
What are
see.
you showing?
possible to see it? Because I mean, I definitely looked on it. Oh no, I
Oh,
dropped you guys. I
hold on.
definitely looked on Instagram, but I think it would be great to. Oh, there we go.
Can you see that?
Yes,
Yeah.
I do.
I'll just show some pieces. Well, can we do, I have like a PDF, thank you, Elena, of each of you. Do you want to talk about some of your work,
Um,
Cassandra?
sure. That piece is
Look,
this is made out of clothing that's collected from Venezuelan migrants. In 2021, I started this big ongoing project where I ask Venezuelan immigrants to give a piece of clothing that relates to their migratory story. And I started making these like really large pieces of work. Then I was left over with a lot of material. And like you, like at this point, people just gift me what they don't want. I also do a lot of like drives for immigrant, either coat drives or in the summer for essentials and whatnot. Um, but oftentimes things that I received are not in good shape to give to people, so then I just use that as material. So I feel there's this circularity between social work and my artwork. This one I made in Detroit. Yeah, like I said, I may draft an idea, but it is very abstract because I'm also dealing with different kinds of tension in all these fabrics, right? Some are more stretchy than others, so that will make that the tapestries react in different ways. This piece I made using a Venezuelan flag that was gifted to me by the people that were occupying the Venezuelan embassy in DC. This was what, in 2022? We haven't had an operating embassy in the US since 2019 when our countries broke um, diplomatic relationships. And I guess technically the opposition was holding the embassy when I visited. But according to military code, the only way to discard a flag, the only honorable way to discard a flag is to burn it. Um, but they decided to gift me a few, three to be exact, because they thought including it in the practice would be honorable. So it was pretty cool. Um, this piece is called Color Studies. I think with this, I was more concerned about the color effects that the clothing could create rather than the actual clothes. Um,
are you weaving? can you talk about how is there a loom? How are you doing this?
So yes, these are made in a wall loom, and in weaving you have a warp and a weft, like your vertical lines and your horizontal lines. Traditional weaving, you'll have like a thinner, kind of more like this style, where you have like a thinner thread for your warp, and then your weft will go in between. In the previous slide, I was using fabric string, like I cut the clothing and create my own string, and so I was using fabric for both the warp and the weft. Whereas pieces like these, the warp is just thread, and then it creates different textures. Um, and in all of these, I'm using like a really basic technique of like one up, one down. That's like the most common way to create a weaving. But yeah, depending on the material, the width of the warp, you create all these different things. This piece is mainly made out of a dress this dancer gave to me. She came from Venezuela, and she had this dress that was part of a collection in a show that was all about like different folkloric dances in Venezuela. And she came with her company here to the US. Well, I guess there in the US in Miami. But they had to change the whole show and do it more of like dances of the Americas instead of just Venezuela. And so this part of the wardrobe, it was never used, but it still had the tag of the dancer. So I felt it was nice to leave the name there.
Do you ever feel sad cutting some of this stuff up? Like what's your emotional connection to the textiles that you're in a way destroying or repurposing?
I never feel like personally sad, you know. I do ask people when they give me the stuff, I do ask like, what is your connection to this piece? Where did it come from? Like, I do want to know like what's the story behind what I'm receiving. There are certain things that are harder to cut than others. Like for instance, I received a jacket that was this Venezuelan flag jacket that was used by the Orquesta Sinfónica Infantil de Venezuela, which is like, but it was also a jacket that is used by the government. So it's like
Oh,
you
wow.
have you have this like really cultural, really beautiful object that it's also very like heavily politicized.
Right.
That really hard for me to cut. But then oftentimes people will come to my studio and they want to talk, and I'm working, and I'm like, all right, so I'm gonna start working with your piece, and to see people's faces when I'm cutting their garment is pretty wild, because you have any sorts of emotion, you know, like there's some people that are really trying to release something
Yeah.
with this, let's say something that was from a past life kind of thing, and
Mm-hmm.
there's like huge sense of relief, almost excitement. But yeah, several times I've cut clothing, and people just start crying. So like I wouldn't say personally me, but being the channel for that, it does feel intense more
Yeah.
than sad. Yeah, yeah,
Can
and
you,
that
yeah.
there
So is that the
are,
map?
yes, that's the first map. These larger pieces I started calling map because, for instance, this one is all Venezuelan immigrants that moved and relocated in New York. So to me, there's an identity that you carry when you leave, but there's also an identity that's built in your host place, right? So when you
Yeah.
see all these items and these colors versus other maps, there are like these identity things that are pulled out. There are like 120 pieces here that belong to 120 people. Um, and as you can see, the majority of the colors are very neutral. I think that's very telling of New York. New York is, oh, people are always wearing black or like very neutral colors. I then did another map where my intention was to do Florida, but it is really curious to me. Like, it doesn't matter if you're like, if your background is Venezuelan or from anywhere else. I feel like in general, yeah, this one, you can see it's already brighter because of the climate and everything. But the kind of person that moves to Florida is really proud to be American. And so what I experienced trying to do a map in Florida was a lot of like non-participation, which in a way informs the study, right? It was more like the kind of immigrant that settles in Florida does not really want to relive their journey. You know, you're very proud to be there. You're really proud to have made it, and you're really proud to assimilate. And so I feel like in Florida you encounter like real quote unquote Latinos, because it's like you really become this like hybrid thing. Oh yeah, can you see that
This is
stuffed
so
animal?
amazing.
Yeah, that person gave me the stuffed animal that they had been carrying for years, and that hat has like a pro Chavez slogan. And when it was hanging at this embassy, somebody threw ink at it, and we try to clean it and wash it away, but it's really interesting how people react. This hat in particular has been very controversial because people are like so offended by it, and I'm not trying to make any propaganda art, but at the same time I'm not trying to hide part of our history. And the submission process is open. I just ask something that relates to your migratory story, and that someone sent that. And so it does relate to our migratory story, because without that, then there probably wouldn't be a crisis as we know it. But you never know what's going to trigger people. I'm really happy that they didn't cut it. It could have been worse. Yeah. So then this piece I ended up doing just like East Coast, because I couldn't get enough work from Florida. So they're clothing that comes from Florida, Virginia, DC, Connecticut, like all along the East Coast, and it is brighter and colorful versus New York, that I feel is more neutral. I wonder, what will happen when I do like a California map, like what that will look like, what's the identity that's going to be translated there. But I stopped this project in 2023 because I was feeling like very depleted. And now I'm considering, I do want to, like I said, it's ongoing because the migration crisis is ongoing, but meeting so many other people with different backgrounds, but again, migratory stories, I feel like I would like to open the call to just like, you don't have to be necessarily Venezuelan to participate, just to see like what an expanded pool of people and experiences can also, yeah, communicate and translate. Um, as we are all really just like moving around willingly or unwillingly, with resources or without resources. I feel like there's so many ways to go around.
And
Oh my gosh.
these do feel very painterly. I mean, they translate like paintings, and I love that. Yeah,
Thank
it's
you.
like I almost see them as like layers of color, coming together, and they're sort of melting together in a way. And they also feel like very much like a map.
Yeah, so like I said, I save all the data of the people that participate. So I have, let's say, like the legend to read the map too. Ideally, I'll put out a book eventually, but I feel like the project is too young to even tap into that.
Do you record?
Do I have a what?
Do you record the stories? Are
No,
they
it's all
they're
written.
written?
It's all written entries. Um, and what's interesting being here and thinking about the work for Campo, is that I've been asking for people to give clothing that relates to their story and whatnot. For Campo's installation, I'm asking for people to give something that more like an offering, because what I'm weaving is more like a braid. And I feel like in many indigenous communities, this weaving or braiding of prayers is like a common thing. So I'm thinking about that. I'm thinking about a collective prayer for us. And the following year, I think it's fitting that it's going to be the end of this year, beginning of the other one. But also the installation is going to be in a train track, and so I think that having this prayer along a train track is also quite powerful, given the way how so many people decide to move between borders. And another way of collecting clothing for the piece that I've been using here in Oaxaca. In Oaxaca, you have these stores called pacas, which are literally packs of clothing that ends up here, that comes from the US. Like, let's say Goodwill's leftovers end up going down south, like a lot ends up in Africa, a lot ends up in various parts of South America. But in the past few years, a lot has ended up here in Oaxaca. So you have these huge stores. You literally like climb on the piles of clothes, sit down, and you start digging. So I'm thinking about like not only people's migration and connection to their clothes, but like I'm thinking about clothing's migration in this like enhanced climate that we're experiencing, with like so much waste from fashion industries and so many like injustices that are happening in all the layers. Thinking about like I've dug stuff that are like Tommy Hilfiger with their tag on, like crazy how these things just keep on traveling. So it's not only the people, right? It's also just the belongings. So I feel like adding part of that for this project will be interesting.
Are you going to collect clothing from here too when you're here? We're going to talk about
And
that. We'll just know we're on it.
I think I mentioned this to Laura, but I want to send out an email to all the residents so they can bring something to be chopped up as an offering.
Great.
And I know the community in Campo is not that large, so yeah. But let me actually bring it. The goal is to put together 200 to 300 meters of clothing, which I don't know if I'll be able to, but I'm definitely gonna try. So far I have 22.
Wow. Okay,
Yeah.
Wow.
you've got time.
Yes.
That's amazing.
And
That is
so
amazing.
here I had a workshop where, like I said, I asked people to bring the clothing that they wanted to part ways and to bring their intentions and everything. And we cut everything collectively, and then each person kept a braid, and then we just kept on braiding, and I put them all together for the piece. So it was nice because people got to leave with something as well. I'm planning to have 2 more of these workshops or sessions in New York before I go to Uruguay, and then to have one there with everyone that wants to
For
participate.
sure. And we'll talk about that, but I'd love to have us do a call here and collect as much as we can.
Yeah,
If you're interested in that. I
I
think
am
that's possible.
super interested.
Okay, cool.
All bundled
Let's
up right now.
thank you for sharing. So beautiful, so inspiring. Arlene, can you talk a little bit about your work too?
Yeah.
Let me show you what I have.
Oh, did we
Hold on.
lose Arlene? I think so.
Oh my God. Here's her work.
Ah,
Do I have have to invite her again? Hold on, let me
I
see.
think so. Yeah, invite them again.
Yeah. Okay.
Hi.
Oh, wait, there I am. Okay, I don't know what I did. I was
You're
trying to.
here. Look,
There
and
we
here's
go.
your work.
I
Here's your
am.
work.
Well, and you know what's cute? That's actually a work of May May. This is her.
Oh.
Ah.
Yeah, so all of my work is from photographs. And that is, I believe that's her and her mom. And so all right, so oh, I don't even know where to start. Um okay, so the work starts with a photograph, and for me it's very much about seeing these tender moments of like, you know, especially in the US and everywhere in the world, I feel like there's all these labels and misused ideas of who we are as undocumented immigrants or as immigrants in general. Um, and then I feel like there's the reality of who we really are. Like, yes, we might, or it might be considered to commit a crime to cross a border or something like that, right? And so I guess, and if you're trying to go by those logistics, like sure you can be a criminal. If like loving your kids is criminal, then you're probably a criminal or whatever, right? But at the core of who you are, you're someone who like loves their child so much. And only you and the other person, or you and your family, are witnesses to that experience, because people don't take the time to see that or to care to see that aspect of who you
Mhm.
are. And so for me, like I'm the crazy Thea who's like, don't move, that's a great picture. Or I'm like constantly photographing these little guys and girls, and just like holding on to these memories that I didn't have as a child. There are very few photographs of my father and I, or my mom and I, when I was a kid, because we left Mexico and because we just like lost a lot of that. And what, like, one didn't have access to cameras, and didn't, you know, like back then you had to like revelar la foto, the disposable camera, so it
Mhm.
wasn't as instant and as accessible as it is now, which is part of what I'm also interested is in, like creating an archive that has not existed for us, and typically is not as important as an archive as other people's stories, right?
Mhm.
And so these works really start, oh, that's me and May May when she was born. That was like the day after she was born. um, and so I wanted to be able to create these portraits that show that intense, passionate love to survive. They're made with reflective fabric and glow in the dark thread. And so if
Mm.
like we were to completely turn off the lights, the father or mother figure disappear, and then the babies are made in this outline that glow in the dark. And so you're
Wow.
able to see
Wow.
this like physical separation that happens, which for me mimics the separation of not being with my dad for a year, since he was the first one to come to the US and left us in Mexico. um so for me, like all in all of the work, it's really important that you as a viewer witness that separation, and that you become a witness to the consequences of migration and the consequences of our politics. And sometimes there are like in this one, sometimes there are children who are alone. And obviously, for me, that's to very much talk about like children that migrate alone, or children who are not reunited with their parents, or children who don't make it across the border, or families that don't make it across the border, and really wanting to tell the whole story of what it is to migrate, right? Because I think I also struggle with like this idea that I made it, um, one, across the border, and two, I am like living this dream of being educated and having a job as an artist, which I was like the original dream, right? It was like to achieve higher education, a different level of wealth, a different level of knowledge, and language, and all of that. And so I often think about all the people who don't get to this stage, all the people who are lost in the poverty, the violence, and the pain of it all, right, that are never on this side. And so this is my brother, her dad, when he was little. And this is a series of four works, that is to talk about like the four directions and the four elements. We often do a lot of tattooing and ceremony and indigenous tattooing, to celebrate where we come from and to connect to our motherland, even though we're disconnected from it. And this was a series where I wanted to honor, there's four of us siblings, where I wanted to honor the four siblings as children, and I picked an element for each one of us. And so the four of us complete, the four directions. And in a sense become whole because we're together, and separate in our own pieces. And all of these are made on tortilla napkins. And so I'm sure you've seen plenty of them in Oaxaca, but for us, it's very traditional to make these elaborate embroidered napkins
Yeah.
that we wrap the tortillas in. And I always thought it was crazy. I was like, how is it that the tortillas have so much love? Like, these grandmas spend so much time embroidering these napkins, and then we just wrap it's artwork, and we just wrap tortillas in them, and we all sit down and eat. Um, so I created this series of napkins with children and their parents on them. And then this series of artworks came after my first visit back to Mexico, where I hadn't been home to Mexico in 25 years, and a lot of my work was on black canvas, because I very much was thinking about like being in darkness and what it means to like not be a part of my homeland culture. And it's interesting, right? It's interesting that like a lot of your works in New York are dark and black and like monochromatic in that way, but like in our home countries, everything is bright, everything is like, so alive and full of
Just
love. And
walking around,
yeah,
right? Just the way like houses are in Latin America, and like the sight of a street is so different versus in the US. Like I feel like there's no, yeah, the use of color. I'm like,
it's it's crazy. Like it's crazy how much of a difference it makes. But that work started after I came home from Mexico, and I was like, I finally understand color. Like I finally understand love in color and how to use color. And so I went on this crazy series of like hot pink paintings,
yeah,
with textiles,
this is
and I
so
was like,
beautiful.
I understand the Mexican pink and how it's tied to identity and how it's tied to love. And I actually I'm still making those because it feels like I haven't finished exploring hot pink. I'm like, it's such a part of like my return home that
I
I'm
love.
obsessed with hot pink.
I'm
Yeah.
obsessed with neon pink and neon orange. This
Oh,
whole year, I've been
wow.
just like, but neon, like fluorescent
Yeah,
in your face.
I love that.
Something about it. Yeah.
Yeah.
This
And then this
is a
series that
beautiful
Heidi.
photo.
Oh, thank you. These are my grandparents.
Love.
And this is the first series where I'm actually using photographs and not abstracting them. This is like a really old, one of the very few photographs of my grandparents. And I did a series of 6 works that talk about our family archive, and then also layer on the traditional ancestral drawings of our different gods and deities. And all of these works come from our body tattoos. So there's a few other ones where I use like my brother's chest piece,
Mm,
to protect
mm.
mom, and it's layered on top of a photograph of mom, and it's really going through my grandparents, my father, my brother, and I, as children. And all of these photographs are like before 1996.
And you
Um,
embroider as well?
yeah,
Beautiful.
yeah, so there's beads and embroidery in this, and this is printed with Malawi Printing in Oregon, and it's done on silk. So
Wow.
they're very delicate, very beautiful photogravures.
Oh, this is
And then
what you were saying with the thread? Oh no, that's a lamp.
yeah, it's this actually made in Mexico City, and
Mm,
well, I'm constantly looking at like I mean, I work mainly in textiles, but I'm constantly looking at how to say the same thing or say the same message in different mediums. And so this is in I forget what metal it is, but it's a laser cut metal, with LED lights on the back. And the title for this is, La Luz Nos Une. And
mm,
so thinking about family separation, but what really unites us. And for me, light is a metaphor for love.
yeah.
And I always go back to this moment of being separated from my father when I was 3 years old, because it feels like the only pain that I can actually, um, recall as a child, or like the only memory that I can recall as a child, is feeling abandoned and feeling loss. and like I would never be reunited with him ever again. But knowing in my heart that like he is a soulmate and I will meet him, I hope to meet him a million times more in every life, right? So it's sort of this like honoring of how we are individual pieces that come together and are united by this love that exists between us two.
Cute.
And then this is another photogravure. This is of me, a picture that I sent dad and some letters that I wrote to him with mom. And on top of it is all of the tattoos that I currently have. So I've been working on a bodysuit since I was 18 years old.
Wow.
And the bodysuit is, yeah, what is it? Tell them. Yeah. The bodysuit is a way to reconnect to our ancestors while not being able to go home. And so tattooing for our family was really a method of untangling our history and making sure that we didn't assimilate to the point that we forgot where we came from. And tattooing has been healing a lot of our wounds surrounding not being able to physically go home. And my two brothers and I are on this journey to be fully tattooed with these ancestral stories, which are very much prayers of protection and prayers of family. And my hope is that one day these children will also want to be tattooed in the same way, but you
Yeah.
never know.
Wow. What are you working on for Uruguay?
Yeah.
For
So
here,
for
for Campo?
Yeah, for Campo, I'm very excited because I work a lot from the archive of letters that I have that I sent to my dad when I was 3 years old. And I feel like those were the first artworks I made about migration and family separation, is like wanting to communicate how much I missed him, and seeing the plans of migration develop through these letters that my parents wrote each other. So, I use them as inspiration for these works that I make now. And then I also use them as titles, but I've never taken them out and made direct work out of them. And so I'm looking to take the text and maybe like paint it onto one of the little casitas that was assigned, and really make it like a physical invitation to um to inhabit of space of loss and love, where like both of these things are present within the casita, kind of like within the heart, right? Like you can have
Yeah.
love only at the cost of loss. And so yeah, I'm really excited to be like bringing the text out of these letters and doing something with them.
Will you be working with textiles at all?
Oh yeah. So there will be textiles inside. I just haven't
Ugh,
decided
I lost you.
what that looks like. But I'm bringing a lot of scraps of textiles from the kids. This little one's growing a lot, so I have a lot of her clothes, and I'm excited to maybe like deconstruct that and reconstruct it into something else. But I guess for me, the most important thing is like really untangling these like very simple messages of like papi no te olvides de mí, um like come back for me, I want to be with you, and then building the thread or taking the thread into a textile.
Beautiful. I wonder if we should do a clothes drive here.
Oh, that would be
Or
awesome.
like, I don't know, something.
I've
I
been
don't, let's
talking
think.
to Dario about that, and it's from the point of view of production is hard, is what the feedback has been.
I know, but he's the city guy. No offense, Dario. I think we could do something like that here in the Pueblo. Let's talk about it.
Or I
Let's
wonder
brainstorm.
if there could be like an exchange, right? Like
Yeah,
if you give something, we give something back.
Yeah.
yeah.
um
Yeah.
We
that way
can
it's
talk
not
about
just
it on the next.
extractive.
I think there's few other artists working maybe with textiles too, so we can see if we can do something. I definitely have clothes to give away. So
Yeah. Travel
Awesome.
with clothes you want to get rid of.
yeah,
That can be
cool.
the invitation.
Um, any last thoughts, you guys? Because we're coming up on the hour.
Honestly, it's been such a rich conversation. Thank you. I'm
I'm
looking
Yeah,
so
forward to
excited.
hang in person. Yeah.
I know.
Yeah, it's
I
really nice to connect.
I'm very excited I feel like Cassandra, you said a lot of things that I'm like, whoa, we could really dive into that.
Yeah,
Maybe
yeah, yeah.
not like entirely appropriate for, or like not that it's not appropriate, but like it sounds just very personal, your journey of like a visa, which is something like that I very much share, is like the idea of marriage and loss of marriage, and the sacrifice of, like, you know, attaining something that seems so unattainable, and is unattainable for a lot of people. So I'm
And then
very excited.
the guilt of having it too, right? Yeah,
And the
yeah,
loss
yeah.
of identity, I've been dealing with that, like the loss of,
It's
I no
intense.
longer can say I'm undocumented, right? But that was my 30 years of life almost. So like, how do you lose that? And you can't just like wake up one day and be like, oh, now I'm American. You know, like that's so
Yeah,
crazy.
yeah,
So I'm
yeah.
excited to keep talking and meet in person.
Yeah. Let's see if I can bring some mezcal from here.
Oh
Yes.
yeah.
I'll save it. I'll hide it.
Great, you guys.
Beautiful.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Thank you.
you.
Thank you. We'll see you. We'll see you in Miami.
Yes.
Yeah, I'll see you
See you
soon.
soon.
Say
Okay.
bye.
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 Bye, Pipit.